Before you understand the secret, you need to understand this family. Because for 30 years, they lived a seemingly perfect life. Organized house, stable routine, present parents, and a daughter who grew up believing she had everything. Laura, an only child. At least, that's what they said. Since she was little, she always heard the same thing. You are everything to us. And it was true. Her parents were careful, attentive, the kind who didn't let anything be lacking. Good education, constant attention, protection may be too much, but there is a detail that only becomes clear after a long time. When someone protects too much, sometimes it's not just love. Sometimes it's fear. And that fear was always there, hidden in the small details, like the way her parents changed the subject on whenever Laura asked about the past, or when she found old photos and some were simply not there, as if someone had erased parts of history. But Laura never insisted, because when you grow up within a reality, you don't question it, you accept it. And it was like that, for years. Until one day something completely unexpected happened. It wasn't an argument. It wasn't a direct revelation. It was something simple, almost insignificant, but it would change everything. A box, hidden in the back of a closet that no one had touched in years. And in that moment, without knowing it, Laura was about to find something that should never have been forgotten. Because some secrets don't disappear. They wait. That box didn't seem important. Old, dusty, hidden behind forgotten objects. It was the kind of thing anyone would ignore, but Laura didn't ignore it. And sometimes, that's exactly what changes everything. She pulled the box out carefully. Her heart felt strange, for no clear reason, as if some part of her already knew. For a second, she thought about leaving it there, closing the closet, going back to the routine, pretending she never saw it. But curiosity was stronger. It always is. When she opened the box, she didn't find anything of value. No jewelry, no money, no important objects, just papers, old photos, documents, things kept without explanation. But there was something there that didn't match the rest. Too much organization, too much care. As if that wasn't forgotten. As if it had been hidden. She picked up the first photo. Her parents, younger, smiling. Nothing strange. She picked up another. An old trip. Happy moments. Everything normal. Until she stopped. An image, different from all the others. A family photo, but not as she knew it. Because there, it wasn't just her parents. There was another child, a boy, approximately 5 years old, smiling, as if he belonged to that place, as if he were part of the family. Laura's body froze. Her mind tried to find a logical explanation, a cousin, a friend, a neighbor, but something didn't add up, because the way her parents looked at him wasn't common. It was intimate. It was familiar. It was the look of a father and mother. And in that instant, a discomfort began to grow. Silent, but impossible to ignore. She kept digging, now with haste, with anxiety, as if she needed to prove that it meant nothing. But the more she searched, the worse it got. More photos. The same boy. At different moments. In different places. Always with her parents, always present, always important. And then, she found something that made her heart race for good. An envelope. Folded. Kept with extreme care. And when she opened it, she realized that it was not just a memory. It was a truth. A truth that should never have been hidden. The envelope felt heavy, not because of the material, but because of what it carried. Laura held it for a few seconds, without opening it, as if, deep down, she knew that after that, nothing would ever be the same again. But it was too late. Curiosity had already passed the point of no return. She opened it. Inside, there was a document. Old, yellowed by time, folded carefully. She unfolded it slowly. Her eyes began to read, but her mind took time to process. Name, date, medical information. Everything seemed technical, cold, distant, until something caught her attention. The last name, the same last name as hers. Laura blinked, read it again, slower, as if she had read it wrong. But no, it was there, clear, undeniable. And then came the line that made everything crumble. Legal guardians. Her father's name. Her mother's name. Her breath escaped her. Her body went cold. And in that instant, everything began to make sense. The photos. The silences. The avoided subjects. That boy wasn't a stranger. He wasn't a cousin. He wasn't a friend. He was part of the family. A part that was never mentioned. A part erased. Laura sat down, her hands shaking. The document fell into her lap, but her eyes remained fixed on it, as if they were still searching for an explanation. But there was none. It was too simple, too direct, too painful. She wasn't an only child. She never was. She had a brother who existed, lived, and was simply forgotten. But the worst part was still to come, because that document was not just a confirmation. It was a warning. There was a note at the end. Small, almost hidden, but impossible to ignore. A date and a word. A word that Laura never expected to find there. And that raised a new question, even more disturbing, because now it wasn't just who was he. It was what happened to him. The word was simple, short, but heavy enough to destroy any doubt. Transfer. Laura stood still, staring at it, without fully understanding but feeling everything. Transfer. To where? Why? And most importantly, when? She turned her eyes back to the date, and it was in that moment that the shock became even greater. Because that date wasn't as old as she imagined. It wasn't something distant, lost in the past. It was close. Too close. So close that it meant something impossible to ignore. They lived together. For a time, both children existed together. In the same house. In the same family. And yet, Laura remembered nothing. Nothing. Not a face, not a voice, not a single moment. It was as if someone had completely erased that part of her life. And that was scarier than anything else. Because it wasn't just a secret. It was an entire story. Hidden with precision. Planned. Maintained. For years. Laura went back to the photos, now with a different gaze, no longer curiosity. Now, it was a search, despair, and then she noticed something that had gone unnoticed before. In some photos, she was also there. Very small, maybe 2, 3 years old, in her mother's lap, in the background, and the boy, always nearby, always present, always part of it. Her heart tightened, because that meant something even worse. They didn't just hide his existence, they erased him from her life. Erased memories, erased moments, erased a bond. And no one does that without a strong reason. Very strong. Laura stood up, her breathing rapid, her head full of questions. But now, she knew one thing. This couldn't wait. She couldn't pretend, couldn't ignore it, couldn't save it for later. She needed answers, and there was only one place where she could find them. in the living room, with her parents. But what she didn't know is that that conversation wouldn't just reveal the past. It would reveal something much harder to accept, because not every secret is hidden just out of fear. Some are hidden out of guilt. Laura went downstairs, her heart racing. Every step felt heavier than the last. The living room was silent. Her father sat on the couch, staring at the television without really paying attention. Her mother in the kitchen, organizing something that clearly didn't need organizing. Everything normal. Or at least, so it seemed. But Laura knew. Now, she knew. We need to talk. The phrase came out dry, direct, no room for escape. They both stopped, at the same time, as if they had already been expecting this. For a long time. Her father turned off the TV. Her mother stood motionless, and the silence that took over the house was different from any other. Heavy, ancient, almost inevitable. Laura didn't sit down. She stayed standing, holding the envelope, like evidence, like an accusation. Who is he? Simple. No beating around the bush, no preparation. And yet, it was enough. The reaction was immediate. Her mother put her hand to her face, her eyes already full of tears. Her father looked away, and in that instant, Laura was sure. It was true. Everything. Every detail. Every suspicion. Every doubt. Are you going to explain this to me, or not? Her voice, now firmer, but inside, everything was crumbling. Her father took a deep breath, ran his hand over his face like someone who knew there was no more running away. We were going to tell you, but the sentence died there, because all three knew that wasn't true. Not after 30 years, not after so much silence. Her mother approached, carefully, as if every step could break something even more. We only wanted to protect you. There was that word again, protect. But now, it sounded different. Wrong. Incomplete. Protect from what? Laura's tone rose, for the first time. It wasn't just curiosity, it was pain. It was revolt. It was betrayal. And it was in that moment that her mother couldn't hold back anymore. Tears flowed, and with them came the first words of a truth that had been buried for 3 decades. He was your brother. The world stopped. Even knowing it, hearing it out loud, was different. More real. Heavier. More impossible to deny. But Laura said nothing, because she knew that was still just the beginning, and that what came next would be even worse. Because now, it wasn't about hiding anymore. It was about explaining why he disappeared. The silence returned, but now, it wasn't empty. It was charged, heavy with everything that still needed to be said. Laura didn't look away. She wanted every detail, every answer, even if it hurt, especially if it hurt. Where is he? The question came out softer, but much more dangerous, because now there was no turning back. Her father closed his eyes for a moment, as if seeking strength. In a past he tried to forget. And then, he spoke. He couldn't stay with us. The phrase was like an impact, direct, cold, raw. What do you mean? Couldn't stay? Laura's voice failed, not from doubt, but from incredulity. Her mother tried to intervene. It wasn't like that. You don't understand. Then make me understand. Now she screamed, because it didn't make sense. Nothing did. You don't simply remove a child from your own home, unless there is something much bigger behind it. And there was. Her father took a deep breath, looked directly at her, and said something that completely changed the perception of everything. He was born sick. Silence. But this time, it wasn't a silence of doubt. It was impact. Sick? How? Her mother answered. With difficulty, through tears. It was a rare condition, serious. He needed care all the time, doctors, medicine, constant attention. Every word weighed more than the last. We tried, her father continued. For years, we tried. And in that moment, for the first time, Laura saw something she had never seen before. Fragility. In both of them. Not as parents, but as people. But the situation only got worse. Her mother squeezed her hands. He needed things we couldn't give. Money, time, structure. Everything was lacking. And what was left was the wear and tear, exhaustion, fear, despair. And then, you gave up? The question came out cutting, but her father answered with the same intensity. No. Immediate silence. We made the hardest decision of our lives. His voice now firmer, more burdened. We took him to a place where he would have everything he needed. Laura felt her body go cold, because she already knew what was coming next. But hearing it was something else. An institution. The word fell like an impossible weight to ignore, and in that instant, the secret stopped being just a lie. It turned into something much bigger, much more complex, much more painful, because now, it wasn't just he existed. It was they chose to let him go. But there was still something wrong, something that didn't fit, because one question was still unanswered. And perhaps, it was the most important of all. And after that? Laura asked. Low, almost afraid of the answer, and her parents' look was enough. Because what came next was not just difficult, it was devastating. And after that, the question hung in the air, suspended, heavy, as if time had slowed down. Just for that moment. Her parents looked at each other, and this time, there was no more softening it, no more hiding it. We didn't go back, her mother said, almost whispering. But to Laura, it sounded like a shout. What do you mean, didn't go back? Her heart raced. Her mind refused to accept it. You left him there, and simply walked away. Her father tried to speak, but found no words, because any explanation would seem insufficient. We thought it was best for him. Incomplete sentence, fragile, almost breaking in the middle. Best for him, or for you. Now there was no more control. Pain turned into revolt. Because to me, that looks like abandonment. Silence. This time, there was no defense. There was no immediate justification, because deep down, they knew. They knew that word wasn't entirely wrong. Her mother began to cry for real, without trying to hide it. You don't know what that was like. Her voice failed. Seeing your child suffering every day without being able to do anything, every word came heavy with guilt. We were breaking, her father added. The whole family was crumbling, and then came the sentence Laura never imagined hearing. We needed to save what was still left. The air got heavy, because now, everything was starting to make sense, but that didn't make it easier. So, you chose. Her voice, lower, colder. You chose between one child and the other. No one answered, because they didn't need to. The answer was there, in the silence, in the look, in history. And in that instant, Laura realized something that hurt even more than the secret. She wasn't just the daughter who stayed. She was part of the decision, the consequence. And that changed everything. But there was still something worse, something none of them had said yet, something Laura felt, but didn't have the courage to ask yet. Because deep down, she knew, if they never went back, Then there was a possibility that changes everything. Is he still there? The question came out almost inaudible, and the silence that followed was the scariest answer of all. The silence answered before the words, heavy, slow, unbearable. Laura felt her heart beat harder, as if every second prepared her for something worse. "We don't know," her father said, and in that instant, it was as if the ground vanished. "What do you mean you don't know?" Now it wasn't just pain. It was incredulity. "You left him there, and never looked for him again?" Her mother tried to speak, but the voice wouldn't come out. "In the beginning, we called," she managed to say. "We received news, reports, updates." Laura held her breath. "And then?" Her father answered. "Then, we stopped. Simple as that. Direct, cold." "You stopped?" The word came out like an echo. "Why?" And then came the hardest part to hear. "Because each bit of news hurt more." Her mother closed her eyes. "He didn't get better. He didn't evolve. There was no prognosis. Every sentence was a blow. And we were trying to move on." Her father added, "Trying to have a normal life." Normal life. Those 2 words were enough. "So you decided to forget?" Laura said, without emotion, without a filter. "It wasn't forgetting," her mother replied immediately. But her own voice couldn't sustain the defense, because deep down, she knew. It was exactly that. They forgot, or at least, they tried. And in that moment, Laura understood something that hurt even more. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an impulsive decision. It was a continuous choice. Repeated. For years, every day. And that had no turning back. She took a few steps back, as if she needed space. Air. Distance. Because everything she believed about her parents was changing. And it wasn't gradual. It was all at once. "What is his name?" The question came suddenly. Both remained silent. For a second, that felt like an eternity. "Daniel," her mother replied. And in that instant, the secret stopped being a story. It became a person, someone real, someone who existed, someone who could still be somewhere. And now, Laura didn't want any more explanations. She didn't want any more justifications. She wanted one thing. Only one thing. "We are going to find him." The sentence was firm, decisive, no room for discussion. Her parents looked at each other, scared, because that decision opened a door they had spent 30 years trying to keep closed. And the problem with secrets, Yoa, is that when they resurface, they don't come alone. They bring consequences. And Laura still had no idea of what she was about to discover. "We are going to find him." The decision was made. It wasn't an impulse. It wasn't a passing emotion. It was a necessity. Laura didn't wait for an answer, because deep down, she knew that if she gave them space, they would try to stop her. "You know where it was." Her father hesitated. Her mother lowered her gaze. The weight of 30 years, coming back all at once. "We remember the name of the institution," he said, finally, low, as if speaking it out loud brought everything back. And it did. The next day, they were on the road, the 3 of them, in silence. No music, no conversation, no distractions, only thoughts, only memories. That until then, were buried. With every mile, the discomfort grew. For the parents, it was like going back to a place that should never have been revisited. For Laura, it was the path to a truth she didn't know if she was ready to face. Hours later, they arrived. The place was simpler than she imagined. Old, with marks of time, but functioning, alive, real. And that was even scarier, because it meant that he could be there all this time. They got out of the car. No one moved for a few seconds, until Laura took the first step, determined, without looking back. At the reception, an older woman attended them, kind, but observant, as if she had seen this kind of situation before. "Can I help you?" Laura took a deep breath. "We are looking for someone." Her voice firm, but burdened. "Daniel." She looked at her parents. "Daniel, last name," the woman typed. Searched. Silence. Seconds that felt like minutes, until she stopped and looked at them. But her look wasn't neutral, it wasn't common, it was different. "Are you family?" The question changed everything, because now it wasn't just about finding, it was about facing. "We are," her father replied, with difficulty, and then came the sentence that none of them were prepared to hear. A simple sentence, but one that would completely change the end of that story. "You arrived too late." The world stopped. Laura felt her body go cold. "What do you mean, too late?" Her voice failed, and the woman's look confirmed the worst. But there was still something that no one there had considered, because too late can mean many things, and none of them are easy to accept. "You arrived too late." The phrase was still echoing, as if time had frozen in that instant. Laura felt her heart tighten. Did he die? The question came out weak, almost a whisper. But the answer didn't come as she expected. The woman took a deep breath and said, "No." Relief came quickly, but lasted only a moment, because what came next was even harder to understand. He left here a few years ago. Confusion, silence. Left? How? Her father asked, his voice trembling. A man came to get him. Now, the impact was different. A man? Laura frowned. What man? The woman looked at the screen again, as if reviewing something important. He introduced himself as his brother. The world stopped again. Brother? Laura repeated. But it made no sense. She was the only child. She always had been. Or at least, that's what she believed. That's not possible, her mother said, almost voiceless. And then, the truth began to reconstruct itself, piece by piece. Did he have an older brother? Laura asked. Her father remained silent, but her mother reacted. Her eyes widened, as if a forgotten memory had just returned. Before Daniel, she said. We had another child. Absolute silence. But he died as a baby. The revelation fell like a shock, but now, nothing else seemed impossible. Or at least, that's what they told us. The air got heavy, because at that moment, a new possibility arose, an even more disturbing possibility. What if that child had never died? What if he had grown up? What if he had discovered the truth? What if he had come back to get the brother who was abandoned? Laura took a step back, her mind trying to keep up with everything. 3 children, one erased, one abandoned, and one who perhaps never truly went away. And in that instant, the greatest secret of that family was not just what was hidden, but what was never discovered. Because while they tried to forget the past was reconstructing itself alone, in silence, waiting for the right moment to return. And when it returned, it didn't just bring answers, it brought consequences. Because some choices don't end when you make them. They continue. For years, for decades, changing destinies, breaking stories, and connecting paths in ways no one can control. And now, the question was no longer about what happened. It was another one, much more unsettling. What is yet to come? And in the end of it all, and this story is not just about a secret, it's about choices, about what we decide to hide, and the price that it demands, over time. A family that tried to move on, erasing the past. A brother who was left behind, as if it were possible to simply forget. And another, who perhaps never truly disappeared. Because the truth is this: secrets don't die. They wait. They grow. And when they return stronger. This story leaves a question that perhaps will never have an answer. To what extent can a decision change the destiny of an entire family? And more importantly, what would you do if you discovered something like this? If this story made you reflect? If at any moment it touched you? Subscribe to the channel, because here you will find stories that go far beyond entertainment. Leave a like, it helps this story reach more people. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this today. And tell me here in the comments, do you think the parents did the right thing or not? Because sometimes there is no easy answer, only consequences.